Right, guys, in this video I wanted to go over why I think that the hyperfixation on very, very strict technique in the context of like hypertrophy training is really, really overrated. And what I mean by this is that there's a crowd of lifters that is very hyperneurotic, I would say, about their exercise technique. You know, they don't allow for any sort of swaying, any sort of body English. They're focused on a hyper specialized exercise to target like very specific parts of a muscle fiber, like an iliac lat pull down, you know, only doing like certain like preacher curls, or only doing certain types of lateral raises with like an exact certain angle of their humerus. And they also really just don't allow for any sort of body English or anything like that associated with their technique. And the positive of this is I think it's good to reinforce standardized technique that is consistent, because that's a really good way to track progress. The main downside to this though is that my personal experience, it results in a lack of effort on the lifter's part and really missing out on more stimulative reps that you could have gotten from training harder. And while this type of technique does sort of minimize fatigue, I think that there's a trend in fitness recently where we are super scared of feeling any sort of fatigue. And the reality is that fatigue is a byproduct of hard training. Like if you are feeling super fresh all the time, you are very likely underdoing it, in my opinion. And you know, likewise, if you're walking in the gym feeling like you just got hit by a train and you're scared of getting that session in, you're probably going just way too hard in general. But we shouldn't be scared of fatigue and lifting in a way that we have like no fatigue, or minimizing that at all costs, because allowing for some minor body English can actually allow you to get more stimulative reps. Something that might be relatable to many of you guys listening to this or watching this is, say that you were to take your bicep curl with a barbell and you were to just only go to where you're not allowing for any sort of leaning back, any sort of hip sway, etc., and see how many reps that you actually get with that, versus allow for like a little bit of hip swing, a little bit of like your back like curling backwards and whatnot, and like compare the actual reps that you got on that set where you allowed for a little bit of body English, which is, you know, usually what people call it, versus just keeping hyper strict. And you probably have like at least 3 reps of a difference there, or likely even more. And my argument there is that that's going to create a better overall muscle stimulus, or stimulus for muscle growth, than the super strict technique one. And there's like a happy medium between, like, I don't want people doing the funky chicken, right, while they're bicep curling and looking like they're having sex with a barbell or whatever. Like, if it looks stupid, it's probably wrong, but there is a happy medium between being like strict with your technique and having appropriate levels of effort. And I would personally rather see a client who has a little more swaying with their bicep curls, but I can just tell that they're working really hard, as somebody who has this really quote unquote optimal pretty technique without you know, actual effort. And I think that if you look at most of these really, really big guys, like, they allow for some body English, and they are because that allows them to train hard, allows them to get more effective reps, and whatnot. So my point with this video is, be aware of your technique, but don't let it hold you back as far as like intensity goes. There's a very happy medium between like being strict and having good high levels of effort. And personally, I just don't know very many really big guys that were super focused on being hyper strict with everything. They mostly just focused on training really hard, and as long as they felt tension on their muscles, they weren't having joint pain, etc., we kind of just go with that. I think there are lots of lifters that are good examples of this, and you just need to take that for what it is. And again, just effort over like perfect technique, because you're going to grow better, in my experience. So hopefully this video makes sense. If you guys have any input, or you disagree with me or agree with me, let me know in the comments down below. But peace.